Friends, Indian culture, literature, religion, and many other phenomena have been traveling abroad since centuries before Christ. It has reached the Eastern and Far Eastern Asia and got absorbed and assimilated there. No distortion, however, is registered of any text or any part of culture, etc. Similar is the case regarding Europe also. However, from 19th century, parallel to Nordic myths, the Indian epic Mahabharata and the myths in it were altered and used for their own purpose, mainly by some Indologists of Germany. Also, in 20th century, some scholars in United States, it is observed, have misunderstood, misinterpreted, and misrepresented the Indian text, to the extent sometimes to have distorted. In this connection, I would like to read out to you some important and relevant portion from my review of the book of Paul Courtwright on Ganesha, published in the Annals of Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute. I quote, "Dealing with the mythology," he states, "Parvati told Viraka to state at Shiva's door, for Shiva is a notorious womanizer." Quotation complete. What Parvati tells Viraka about Shiva is Gaurangi Lampata Yeshaha, enamored of woman of white complexion, as it is translated by Tagore, and not, as the author says, a notorious womanizer. Further important are the contents of the third chapter, ritual, psychological and religious themes in the mythology of Ganesha, the Freudian analysis of the character and mythology of Ganesha, which is supposed to be the original contribution of the author. He has made in it very strong and derogatory statements regarding perhaps the most popular Indian god. He calls him eunuch. In the eyes of the author, the flaccid trunk and the broken tusk are the symbols of the male generative organ. The whole chapter is very hurting to the emotional Indians and creates disgust in the minds of the native readers in general. It is very difficult to understand the purpose behind such depiction and distortion. Finally, the concept, nature, image, and form of God are the creation of man and of a particular group of society, and hence these should be studied in the perspective of that particular society. The authors or compilers of the Puranas are very frank and open. When they mean such sexual symbolism, they state it openly. Had they some such notions regarding Ganesha in their mind, they themselves would have expressed so in their texts. It is advisable, therefore, not to read too much between the lines. As far as possible, such attempts of trying to find relevance of the ancient Indian text in connection with the modern phenomena, may it be science or the Freudian principles, should be avoided by scholars. Quotation complete. There was another such book, similarly reviewed by me, again for the Annals, which is Same-Sex Love in India, but the review is yet to be published. The reason why I was reminded of this is a long article I came across of Robert Goldman, in which he has stated, I quote, "The problem of the nature and indeed the very existence of what might meaningfully be termed an Oedipal theme in the vast body of surviving Indian mythic and legendary literature has engaged the attention and exercised the wits of a number of scholars over the last several decades. Yet, with a few partial exceptions, it appears that this important question has so far been brought to no very satisfactory resolution. In this paper, I will examine the occurrence, typology, significance, and nature of the Oedipal myths in what is perhaps the most seminal, widely known, and culturally influential genre of Indic literature, the Sanskrit epics, the Ramayana, and the Mahabharata. Quotation complete. Goldman next quotes Professor A.K. Ramanujan. He quotes, "Searching for stories of the Oedipus type some years ago in Indian myth and folklore, I found very little that looked like the Sophocles play." Quotation complete. He adds his comment on it. By this, I quote, by this he means to say that positive Oedipal episodes, that is, those in which aggression is directed from son to father and libido from son to mother, are relatively rare in India. Quotation complete. It is clear from this statement that he is making confusion between the Oedipus legend and Oedipus complex. That he is not at all correct in stating so will also be clear soon. Then, taking the help of the word guru used for both the father and also the teacher, Goldman continues, I quote, "The great emphasis placed upon this identity of the spiritual master and the father is of paramount interest in connection with the question of the Oedipal conflict. The most intensely affective and most continually stressed aspect of the student-teacher relationship is the possibility of sexual relations between the student and his master's wife. If the scope of this inquiry in this matter is restricted to materials that conform closely to the classical legend of Oedipus, that is a legend in which a son actually kills his own father and marries his mother, then indeed one is hard put to find any such episodes in all of the Sanskrit literature." Quotation complete. Then, referring to the story of Arjuna and Babhruvahana in the Mahabharata, Goldman makes a statement. I quote, "It is clear from Ulupi's final and most fundamental explanation that Arjuna's death is a direct result of and punishment for what is in fact nothing other than his own act of patricide. For in killing Bhishma, Arjuna has himself been guilty of the same primal crime, the murder of the father." Quotation complete. After patricide is given the reference to Mahabharata 1482-8. In the original verses, however, there is no reference to patricide or killing the father, etc. I have shown the verses in the slide. I will read the translation. "Since, O Partha, in the Mahabharata war, the king, the son of Shantanu, was killed by you with adharma, that is in improper way, this is the expiation for that. O valiant one, you did not fail Bhishma when he was fighting. You killed him, taking resort to Shikhandin when he was adhered to him." Translation mine. Goldman further adds, I quote, "However, the most striking confirmation that an Oedipal conflict is being disguised here is to be obtained from the hitherto unexplained fact that Arjuna cannot, in fact, kill Bhishma unaided in a fair fight. Arjuna, using the effeminate Shikhandin as a shield, finally kills his beloved grandfather. Now, what can be the significance of this extraordinary situation? Clearly, Shikhandin, who, despite the change of sex, remains a woman for Bhishma, can only represent the missing mother in this curious displacement of the Oedipal triangle. Like a son, jealous and enraged to find his father engaged with his mother, Arjuna must strike down the father and claim the mother for himself. Quotation complete. Friends, does this argument need any comment? Goldman, however, has nowhere cited the original Oedipus story. To understand the topic well, I consider it necessary to cite it here, at least in brief. Oedipus is a character from the Greek mythology. The first known literary reference to it is around 800 BC in Homer's epic titled Odyssey. Just as Shakuntala episode in Mahabharata became world famous through Kalidasa's play Abhijnana Shakuntalam, similarly, Oedipus' story also came to gain fame world over due to first Sophocles' play Oedipus the King, and then more so due to the theory of Oedipal complex of Sigmund Freud. Thus is the story. Laius was the king of the region called Thebes in Greece. The name of his wife was Jocasta. An oracle of Delphi announced that Laius' son would kill him. Hence, immediately after his son was born, Laius pierced his feet and told a servant to leave him on a mountainside to die. A shepherd saw him there, rescued him from the ties, and brought him to the king of Corinth, who readily accepted and brought him up. Since the feet, that is, pus in Greek, of the child were swollen, he was given the name Oedipus, that is, of swollen feet. When grown in a man, Oedipus came to know about the oracle from his friends, and to avoid the death of his parents at his hands, he left Corinth and set out on journey to be away from them. On his way, he met an old man at a place where 3 roads meet, who was attended by 5 servants. He had an argument with that old man and killed him together with his 4 servants. The servants survived, fled back to Thebes, and told the queen that they were attacked by robbers and the king and the other servants were killed in the fight. Continuing his journey, Oedipus reached Thebes. The city was guarded by a horrifying being called Sphinx. The Sphinx is a mythical being having the head of a human, a falcon, a cat, or a sheep, and the body of a lion with the wings of an eagle. In Greek tradition, the Sphinx has the head of a woman, the haunches of a lion, and the wings of a bird. She is mythologized as treacherous and merciless, killing and eating those who cannot answer her riddle. The Egyptian Sphinx, on the other hand, is a man. Moreover, the Egyptian Sphinx has ferocious strength, similar to the Greek one, but is benevolent, unlike the malevolent Greek. However, important is that both these were thought to be the guardians flanking the entrance of the city. Thus, standing at the gates and protecting the city from the invaders, the Sphinx used to devour all those who passed by and could not answer the riddle she presented, which was, what walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 legs at night? As was the practice, Oedipus was also stopped at the gate and was asked this puzzle. Fortunately, he gave the correct answer. which was a human being, since he crawls on all fours when he is young, then walks upright on two legs as a youth, and further, in old age, uses a cane for support. The Sphinx became so desperate and angry when Oedipus answered the riddle correctly that she killed herself. The Thebans rewarded him with an offer of marrying Jocasta, the queen, the wife of Laius. Oedipus also, unaware of his relation to Jocasta, that she was his mother, married her, and they further had 4 children. After many years, the city was attacked by plague, and the oracle proclaimed that it would last until the murderer of Laius was discovered. Oedipus diligently began the search, and lo, it so turned out that he came to know that not only he had killed Laius, the king and his father, but also that he had married his mother, and he has married his own mother. Jocasta hanged herself when she learnt about the truth, and Oedipus plucked his eyes out. Here ends the story. This will make it clear how far Goldman is to be believed when he states, I quote, Oedipal legends in which a son knowingly or otherwise attacks his father in order to secure sexual possession of his mother, that is, the classic Oedipal type of tale. Obvious it is that he is doing injustice to Oedipus by making this statement, and also that he is making confusion between the Oedipus legend and the Oedipal complex. Now let us see in brief what Sigmund Freud means by Oedipal complex. The Oedipal complex is a term used by Sigmund Freud in his theory of psychosexual stages of development and is used for both Oedipal and Electra complex. Oedipus complex involves a boy aged between 3 and 6 becoming unconsciously sexually attached to his mother and hostile towards his father, whom he views as a rival. There arises first envy and then jealousy aimed at the father, who is the object of the mother's affection and attention. These feelings for the mother and rivalry toward the father lead to fantasies of getting rid of his father and taking his place with the mother. The hostile feelings towards the father lead to castration anxiety, an irrational fear that the father will castrate him by removing his penis as punishment. To cope with this anxiety, the son identifies with the father. This means the son adopts and internalizes the attitudes, characteristics, and values that his father holds, that is, personality, gender role, masculine behavior, and others. The father becomes a role model rather than a rival. Through this identification with the aggressor, the boy acquires his superego and the male sex role. The boy substitutes his desire for his mother with the desire for other women. The attachment research provides considerable support for the basic psychoanalytic hypothesis that the quality of the child's earliest relationships affects the whole course of later development. Both Bowlby and Erikson see early relationships as prototypes of later relationships. Belief in the impact of early experience is a lasting legacy of Freud's developmental theory. As is clear, Freud states that a boy had jealousy, strong jealousy toward his father, which gives rise to this complex. In the mythical account, however, Oedipus does not have any such adverse emotion towards his father. Neither does he have any attraction for his mother, that he marries her and creates children. It is just an accident that he kills his father. Also, that he marries the queen and cohabits is the decision of the citizens of Thebes. Oedipus does not have any sexual attraction towards her. In spite of all these differences, the complex is thus named, which, according to me, is very unfair to Oedipus. Now, the stories similar to the story of Oedipus are found in the narratives in the Puranas. Thus, it is in the Godavari Mahatmya. I quote, "There lived in a place called Papa Pranashana, a Brahmin called Dhrutavrata with his wife Mahi. His son Sanajjata was very brilliant. Unfortunately, Dhrutavrata met with untimely death. Since life was difficult at that time for a beautiful young widow, Mahi left the child in the hermitage of the sage Galava and being caught by lust kept on wandering from place to place and to one man after another. Sanajjata became well versed in Vedic texts but was attracted to prostitutes. One day he reached the place called Janasthana and met a prostitute who was none other than his own mother. Being ignorant of the mutual relation, they began staying together as husband and wife. Even though visiting prostitutes, Sanajjata had not given up his studies and the Brahmanical way of life. He was earning money and was observing all the religious rites. However, in the mornings when he was going for bath on the river, he looked like a leper, whereas while coming back was always shining with luster and beauty. He himself was not aware of it. The sage Galava, residing on the bank of the river, used to watch this every day. Being curious, he finally asked Sanajjata, who was about to turn to go home after paying homage to the sage, as was his daily practice, about his residence and family. Sanajjata came home promising him to tell everything the next day. When he asked his wife that night and came to know about the facts, he fainted and fell on the ground. After coming to his senses, he told her that Dhrutavrata was his father and he was her son, and that unfortunately he has committed the sin of sleeping with his mother. At the daybreak, he went to see Galava and with repentance and sorrow confessed his sin. The sage consoled him and told that due to taking bath in Godavari every day and due to following his Brahmanical duties, he was free from the sin. And his mother also, since she repented, would be free of her sin after she took bath in the river. Thus then, due to the power of the river, both became free of the sin. There is another story from a Jain Mahakavya. Since I found some part of it utterly novel and immensely interesting, I would like to share it with you. Kuberasena, a courtesan from Mathura, gave birth to a twin, a son and a daughter. Being terrified by the madam of the house, she made two signet rings carved Kubera Datta on one and Kubera Datta on the other. Placed them both with those two rings in a casket studded with jewels and set it afloat in the river Yamuna. A pair of merchants found them and shared them, giving them the names on the rings. When they grew in youths, they married them with each other, though they were looking alike. Now one day, Kubera Datta showed his ring to Kubera Datta, who was very astonished. Then they asked their parents about it and came to know that they were siblings. Kubera Datta then lost the taste for worldly life and left the house to become a Jaina nun. Kubera Datta, on the other hand, left the city for business, met his mother Kubera Sena, and not knowing the relation, married her. A son was born to them. Through the special powers Kubera Datta had achieved through her ascetic practices, She came to know about the behavior of her brother and decided to save him from it. From here I quote, "Now one day the nun Kuberadatta saw the robust son of Kuberadatta, and knowing how monks and nuns enlighten, she spoke these absolutely true words. I quote, 'Child, you are my brother-in-law, for you are the brother of my husband, and our mother is the same woman, and so you are also my brother. My husband begot you, and so that makes you also my child. But your father is the child of my mother's husband, which makes you my uncle. And you are my brother's child, which makes you my nephew. Your mother is my mother, who bore us both in her womb. And that woman is also the mother of my mother's lover, which makes her my grandmother. She is the wife of the young man who was born from my co-wife, which makes her also my daughter-in-law. And she is the mother of my husband, which makes her my mother-in-law as well. She is the wife of my brother, which makes her my sister-in-law. And she is the wife of my husband, and so is my co-wife. And as for your father, who is the lover of my mother, I guess that makes him my father too. You are my uncle, and he is your father, and an uncle's father is your grandfather. So he is my grandfather as well. My mother and his mother are the same woman, and so he is my brother. He is the husband of the woman who bore my husband, and so is my father-in-law too. He took my hand in marriage, and so he became my husband in addition to all of this. And he is the son of my co-wife, and so he is my son as well. Listening to this, Kubera Datta was as if thrown in whirlpool and asked Kubera Datta for explanation. After coming to know from her what he has committed, he left the house for forest and practiced penances. Kubera Sena also repented, got disgusted with worldly life, and took the vows of the Jain householders. Now, regarding the Vedic literature, Goldman has stated, if the scope of inquiry, I quote, if the scope of inquiry in this matter is restricted to materials that conform closely to the classical legend of Oedipus, that is, a legend in which a son actually kills his own father and marries his mother, then indeed one is hard put to find any such episodes in all of the Sanskrit literature. Even if one allows for the extraordinarily strongly expressed taboo on maternal incest that is characteristic of Indo-Aryan culture and excludes or represses this part of the story, it is still difficult to find Indian myths or legends in which a son kills or even shows any significant aggressive behavior towards his actual father. Quotation complete. I personally consider this a too bold and rash statement, landing one into calamity, since some such story is available in the Jaiminiya Brahmana, one of the Vedic texts belonging to the Samaveda. It is published as late as in 1956, has no accent and no commentary. Kalandas translated some selected passages from it. Among the three chapters, the first one is translated completely by Bodewitz. In the third chapter of that text occurs a myth which is interesting and also very important in the present context. The passages are an introduction to the Sausravasa Saman, how it was seen and used in the ancient times. Since those are important, From various points of view, especially linguistically so, the original Sanskrit is also cited here. The passage reads, I will not read the passage, it is there. I translate it. The Saushravasa Saman is composed on these. Kutsa was Aurava son of Indra, born on his Uru, that is thigh, or from his Uru, that is thigh. He was exactly like Indra, as is one born from one's own self. He made him charioteer. He caught him red-handed with his, that is Indra's wife, Shachi Paulomi. Indra asked her, how did you do so? She said, I could not distinguish you two separately from each other. Indra said, I will make him bald so that you can distinguish him. He made him bald. Kutsa approached her wearing a headgear. That is the headgear of a charioteer. But he did catch him red-handed. He said to her, how did you do so? She said, I could not distinguish. He approached me, concealing his bald head with the headgear. Indra said, I will sow dust particles or dots between his two shoulders so that he could be distinguished. Kalan takes it as breast, but it is also possible to take it to mean back, the portion between the two shoulders. Thus he sowed dots between his two shoulders. Those are these freckles of the charioteer. He covered them and approached her. He did catch him red-handed. He asked her, how did you do so? She said, I could not distinguish. He approached me, covering himself. Indra threatened Kutsa. You are caught now. The son said, O Maghavan, may we, he uses we in the sense of me, never be with her. Give that to those us by which we can survive. We are born from you. You should remove these dust particles between the two shoulders. Indra did remove them. There arose a big town in place of those dust particles and big dust particles. He became their king. He had a priest called Upagu Saushravasa, that is Upagu, the son of Sushravas. Kutsa said, do not sacrifice for anybody. The one who performs a sacrifice when there is my rule is to be won over and deprived of his property. The gods do not partake of his who has not sacrificed. No, not even a leaf is to be offered. That Indra approached Upagu and said, I will make you sacrifice. He said, no, no offerings are offered here. They will conquer the one who will offer here. Indra showed him each and every world, saying, by giving offerings, one wins over this and this world. Upagu Saushravasa thought, let them win over him. All right, let me offer for him. Indra said, give offerings for me. Upagu performed sacrifice for him. On their own, there arose the hall and the oblation storage, Havirdhana. Upagu pressed the soma in the mortar. He said, come here, avoiding Kutsa. But Indra went near Kutsa himself. He said, Kutsa asked him, whom did you make perform sacrifice? Upagu. Conquer this Upagu, Kutsa ordered. They conquered him. Twice, thrice he went to him and said, I will let you sacrifice for me. He said, they do not perform sacrifice here. They will conquer the one who will sacrifice here. Twice did he sacrifice, thinking, they will surely conquer him. He showed him each and every world, saying, by giving offerings, one wins over this and this world. Upagu thought, let them win over him. All right, let me offer for him. Indra said, give offerings for me. He performed the sacrifice for him. On their own, there arose the hall and the oblation storage. He pressed the soma in the mortar. Upagu said, go in such a way that Kutsa would not see you. But he came near Kutsa himself. Kutsa said, whom did you make perform sacrifice? Upagu. Then Kutsa himself stood near him and cutting him into pieces, scattered him in the water. His father Sushravasa Thaurayana came to know that Kutsa Aurava cut his son into pieces and scattered him in water. He ran to him and said, where have you thrown my son? He answered, here he lies scattered in the waters. Sushravas followed him to it. Indra had sucked in the soma from his mouth, taking the form of a rohita or red fish. He thought, oh, this is Indra. Him will I praise. He only will bring this mine to life. He had the vision of this Saman. He praised him with that. Apadu Shipriya Anvasas Sudakshasya Prahoshina Indor Indro Yavashiraha. Indra asked him, why are you praising me? He said, please bring this my son to life. He shook Upagu up with the utterance, E Mathaya. He brought him to life. Such that is a medicinal and expiatory Saman. He medically treated him and also performed the expiation. Unsuccessful was this seventh day. He cures him with this. He medically treats it and also performs the expiation. This is wish procuring also. He desired for this. That desire of his was fulfilled. With whatever desire one praises with this Saman, that desire of his is fulfilled. Since Sushravas Taurayana saw it, it is called Saushravasa. Here ends the passage. Actually, one doubts whether the first half of the story has anything to do with the origin of the Saushravasa Saman, and whether, even without it, the story could be told. Just stating that Kutsa was Indra's son. It might appear to be so, but it is necessary since it gives the reason why he bans sacrifice. It is very much clear that the details of the story differ from that of Oedipus. Herein, Kutsa has attraction towards his mother and goes again and again to her, overcoming the precautions taken by his father, Indra. It is true that Shachi is not shown as provoking him, but at the same time it seems that she does not prohibit him. Neither she nor Kutsa repents what they have done. Only due to Indra's threat, maybe Kutsa promises not to be with her. Further, he begs for subsistence and on top of it becomes rude to his father after he becomes the king. Thus, compared to repenting and sorrowful Oedipus, Kutsa comes forth as a shameless and arrogant son. The idea behind the story does have some similarity with the story of Oedipus, but as is evident, it is different from it. However, more important than that is that it refers to the Oedipal complex itself. As it is characteristic, here also is found the attraction of Kutsa, the son of Indra, towards his mother Shachi Paulomi, who is Indra's wife. Further, even the jealousy and then enmity towards father is evident in Kutsa, even after he becomes independent and king of a separate region. In the original Greek story, Oedipus repents when he comes to know what he has committed and plucks his eyes out. In the present story, however, Kutsa seems to be shameless and does not stop committing the same act again and again till he is threatened and finally separated. However, it gives rise to certain doubts also. One cannot understand the working of the mind of Shachi here. Indra said to her that he would make Kutsa bald and mark his back or breast or both with freckles so that she would be able to distinguish between them. How is it then that she does not doubt and verify who he is? It leaves some room to suspect that she might be supporting Kutsa. Further, Kutsa is not punished at all. On the contrary, he gets separate kingdom. But his rivalry with his father still continues. Now it becomes clear why the story is added in the beginning. In history, one comes across various instances where a son conquers all and his father, his siblings and his father, and snatches his kingdom. The famous example immediately coming to mind is that of Aurangzeb. So, the story without the mother-son relation would have been some early example to it. But the Shachi Kutsa story gives a totally different dimension to it. As is already seen, the stories similar to the story of Oedipus are found in the narratives in the ancient Indian literature. But this story actually speaks of Oedipal complex with all its peculiarities and characteristic features evident. It suggests that though it was not theorized by them, the ancient Indian sages were certainly aware of such complex. Then to call this phenomenon as Oedipal complex is anachronism. It is almost invariably observed that whatever new idea comes up in psychology, it already has some parallel in ancient Indian text. And now I am convinced that it is true regarding Oedipal complex as well. It suggests, though, it suggests that though it was not theorized by them, the ancient Indian sages were certainly aware of such complex. Now the phenomenon should be renamed as Kutsaganda or Kautsaganda, isn't it? Thank you. Thank you, friends, for your patient listening.